And if you look closely immediately above the hatch, you can see the area where you can see them working in now. That's where those drogue chutes deployed from. The two circles on either side were where the mortars were. The main parachutes now hidden by the platform underneath the side hatch.
So the crew is in the process of removing the side hatch. We can see that Go Navigator is in transit. It is making its way back to the Pensacola Naval Air Station. However, Bob and Doug will get a ride from the recovery vessel via helicopter. So again, we're preparing to open the side hatch, and once that is done, the flight surgeon will pop his head in, do an initial check, see how Bob and Doug are doing.
And Dragon SpaceX, we've got a slight delay due to some potential NDO hits near the side hatch.
Copy, Mike. We're standing by.
And so they're still continuing to do kind of those sniffs, so checking for any vapors or anything. So those NDO, it's NO2, nitrogen dioxide, primarily can get detected in the air from the burning of fuel. So they're going to continue to just inspect around the capsule, make sure that it's, again, safe for the crew, safe for the recovery experts before they get this hatch open. But again, moving right along the timeline, it's since they splashed down at 11:48 a.m. Pacific. And so again, they're just pausing the operations for a moment, doing some additional air sampling around the prop system. We still have telemetry being fed from the vehicle, so flight controllers here in Hawthorne able to monitor prop tanks, propulsion tank pressures, and not seeing any issues with those at the moment. So again, just a short pause in the operations as, again, they're just sniffing around the capsule, making sure we don't have any readings that might indicate a fuel leak or anything around the vehicle. They did detect some NDO, some nitrogen dioxide, which is typically a residue that arises from the burning of fuel. So they're continuing to do just a couple of different air readings, grab samples essentially, before they proceed with the hatch opening.
And Dragon SpaceX update, we're still investigating. Looks like we'll be setting up a service section purge. We're working on an ETA for you.
Copy.
In case if you're just joining us, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley have safely returned from the International Space Station. They made an on-time splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico just off the coast of Pensacola, Florida at 11:48 a.m. Pacific, 18:48 a.m. Universal Time. And they have been pulled out of the water and hoisted onto the recovery vessel Go Navigator. And right now the team is just completing, they did an initial check and found that there might be some remnant vapors, which we certainly don't want to be around when we have Bob and Doug coming out of the capsule. So the team is working to purge the service section in preparation for crew egress. Just a little commentary on the hatches that we've been talking about. So while Dragon's top hatch is used to connect to the International Space Station, that's the one that's located under the nose cone, which is currently hidden there at the top of the capsule. This is the side hatch is what is utilized for ingress and egress, both on the launch pad as well as coming up here on the recovery vessel. When the when the capsule is docked to the International Space Station, they will use the forward hatch to exit and enter the capsule. Something to note that once that side hatch is opened, it'll be the first time that Bob and Doug have gotten a breath of fresh air, the first time that they've been able to do so in 2 months since they boarded the Falcon 9 at the start of their mission back on May 30th.
Yeah, with an on-time splashdown, they return with almost exactly 64 days in space on this mission, just a few minutes shy of that. So I know they're looking forward to it. At a minimum, in a little bit more of a stable condition now that they're on the boat and not in the water. But again, our team's just continuing to step through. They're reporting that they're seeing all of the vapor levels that they initially detected have been dropping, and that service section purge.
Dragon SpaceX, we show that levels are declining but are continuing with purge.
Copy.
And in addition, just so you know, we are not seeing any, leak indications or anything like that. These are pretty small levels, but we still need to do the purge at this time.
Okay, copy. Yeah, you're reading our mind, Mike. We were just wondering if you saw any indications of a leak or some depressurization somewhere, but it sounds like it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, that's a good readback, Doug.
All right, so we're just continuing to get a view down right at the hatch of the capsule. They are detecting those very small traces of a couple of the hypergalls. The one we've heard specifically mentioned was NDO or NO3 nitrogen or NO2 nitrogen dioxide. They are at very low levels, obviously not at a very harmful level, as we still have people in close proximity to the capsule. They are going through with the purge. They're not seeing any indications of a leak in the service section of Dragon. That's where pretty much all of those different fuel tanks with the hypergalls are located inside the capsule. And we are just about 44 minutes post splashdown, actually still ahead of the timeline. as we weren't expecting to get the hatch open until shortly before 60 minutes, at which point we'd be bringing Bob and Doug out. So this service section...
SpaceX, another update. The service section purge should begin in a bit under 5 minutes. Right now we're showing NTO about 2x of our personnel exposure limits, and we're hoping once we start the purge, it'll drop down for us.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
And I'm going to have to correct myself. So it's NTO, that's the dinitrogen tetraoxide, and that's one of the hypergolic fuels used inside Dragon for powering those Draco thrusters. So again, the SpaceX engineers detecting levels of NTO. It's dinitrogen tetraoxide. It's one of the hypergolic fuels used inside the Dragon spacecraft. Levels higher than they would like, so they're essentially doing a purge to help dissipate any vapors in and around the service section where those fuel tanks reside in the Dragon capsule. We're expecting that to take within the next 5 minutes or so. We were still expecting the crew out inside of an hour, so still on the timeline or a few minutes ahead, and we should be seeing Bob and Doug. Once we see those levels continue to drop around the capsule, we'll begin to step through the hatch opening process once again.
So right now we're getting ready to purge the service section. This is to make sure that the lingering NTO fumes that the team is detecting get flushed out, essentially. The service section is not the interior cabin where Bob and Doug are. It's actually the part of the capsule that is outside of the place where Bob and Doug are. It's external to the cabin, but it's inside the capsule itself. So you can think of it as the space between the exterior of the Dragon capsule and the interior space where Bob and Doug are. There's
I think the interior pressure vessel, essentially.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So Bob and Doug are fine. The air that they are breathing is, that nitrox mix that they've been getting throughout the entire duration of today's operations. But it'll be essentially the area below their cabin, completely sealed off from the service section. Yeah, that service section is where there's a lot of telemetry. It's where there are the prop tanks, and we're just making sure that those get aerated so that lingering fumes are swept away.
Yeah, again, they had detected higher levels than they want to see of nitrogen tetraoxide. That's one of the two hypergolic fuels used in Dragon, the other one being monomethylhydrazine. Those two fuels, essentially when thrown together, even without an ignition source, will react. That's what makes them hypergolic fuels. Much simpler, more elegant solution used in a lot of on-orbit maneuvering systems in spacecraft. So again, we're just standing by.
So as you can see on your screen, there is one crew member that has kind of what looks like a...
Dragon SpaceX, don't have a huge update for you, just letting you know the service section purge is still in work. And we'll try to get you out of there shortly.
Copy.
So as I was saying, two individuals on your screen there, one with a face mask and what looks like a scuba tank there with some clean breathing air. There might be another crew member with the same personal protective equipment or PPE that will come on deck here. That type of equipment, there we go. That's the kind of equipment that is required in order to perform this purge. Again, the NTO is, the fumes from that are toxic. And of course, we want to keep all crew members safe as we prepare the side hatch for opening in order to let
Dragon
Bob and Doug
SpaceX,
egress.
looks like limits are dropping and getting pretty good. We're still continuing with the purge just to be extra sure.
Okay, that sounds good, Mike. Thank you.
All right, so we just heard the call. The limit's continuing to drop on that NTO, that nitrogen tetraoxide. So they're just going to continue to monitor those. They're doing a purge, essentially flushing the air around the service section where the tanks for those hypergolic fuels are in Dragon. As Kate was talking about, they're not inside the pressure vessel, the section of the Dragon interior where Bob and Doug and their atmosphere exists. They're essentially outside the pressure vessel, but still inside the outer shell of the Dragon spacecraft. We are just about 52 minutes post splashdown. Again, we're just waiting for them to get good readings on the levels of any hypergol vapors still in existence around the capsule, and then they'll be able to step back in to this hatch opening. We did hear confirmation that they haven't seen any indication of leaks through the telemetry they're still receiving from the Dragon capsule. And so,
Dragon SpaceX, we're going to purge for 1 more minute.
Copy.
There we go. Should be 1 more minute. And then if levels have dropped sufficiently, we'll be able to step back in to the hatch opening process.
Bob and Doug will be getting assistance from the recovery teams while exiting Dragon Endeavour. This is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, as returning to a gravity-rich environment can, be a little jarring, wreak havoc with our vestibular system. So which is responsible for maintaining balance and motion. Of course, as you've heard us say multiple times earlier, safety is our #1 priority with this operation. So you will see both Bob and Doug helped out of the capsule and assisted to just the few feet over to the medical quarters aboard the boat.
Yeah, if you've ever watched long-duration crews return on a Soyuz, it's pretty similar process where they're literally carried out of the capsule and immediately placed down into a waiting chair where they usually get some initial medical checks out there in the field before they're then carried to an inflated medical tent. We don't have a tent, we have quarters, and they're a whole lot closer, so they'll just have a couple of feet to go from the capsule itself into those medical quarters. And then once they're in there, they'll get some initial checkouts from their flight surgeons who are on location on the boat with them. These are the people that have essentially been responsible for their health and well-being throughout their mission, both beforehand, all of their pre-flight data takes, offering them support in the lead up to launch, and then the entire time while on board the International Space Station. And then they're right here with the front line, with the recovery teams, ready to welcome them home. So it's been just about a minute since we heard that last call to the crew. We should be just about done with the purge. We're going to stand by, and hopefully we'll resume these hatch opening operations in just a moment.
Dragon SpaceX 4 update.
Good.
Okay, exterior, we're seeing 3 parts per million NTO and 6 parts per billion of MMH. Nil, however, is asking that you de-stow your Draggers and take a sample inside the cabin.
Yeah, which detector? What number, Mike?
Yeah, it'll be detectors 2 and 3 in location 14.
Copy.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
All right, so we just got the call out of the current readings of both the NTO, the nitrogen tetroxide, and the monomethyl hydrazine, either in the parts per million or the parts per billion. But just as an extra safety precaution, we heard Anil, so Anil Menon, the medical authority from SpaceX on the boat, asking the crew to take out some air detectors that they have inside with them just to do some quick sampling inside the cabin itself. So again, we've said it before, we'll continue to say it throughout, safety the top priority with this operation. So the teams are going to be very methodical and make sure that everything is in a good setup, a safe environment, not only for the crew themselves, but also for our recovery forces. But for now, Bob and Doug still inside of Crew Dragon. We are just 58 minutes post-landing.
SpaceX Dragon with a status.
Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, for NO2 on detector 2, it reads 0.0. And on detector 3, it also reads 0.0 for MMH.
Okay, great news. 0.0 for detectors 2 and 3 for NO2 and MMH. Thank you very much.
That's a good copy.
And so Doug Hurley reporting zeros across the board, no traces of either the NTO or the MMH.
Dragon SpaceX for a status update. Okay, so currently our exposure limits are below limits, but the purge is actually doing a pretty good job. We saw NTO go from 3 parts per million down to 1.5 over the last few minutes. So ideally, with a lot of caution, we'd go ahead and let the purge run for a little bit longer, but we want to see how you guys are doing. If you're okay with continuing with the purge versus knock it off and get you guys out of there quickly.
Yeah, we're fine hanging out, Mike. No problem here.
Okay, thanks for that, Doug. We'll keep working the purge to get us down, and thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Yeah, let's just keep everybody safe. No reason to rush.
Yeah, we concur.
Spacecraft Commander Doug Hurley reporting the crew still doing well in Dragon, so they are good to continue to hang out. The medical authority there on the boat recommending as long as the crew is okay and still doing well inside Dragon, they'll just continue with the purge, trying to get those trace readings of any hypergol vapors all the way down to 0. Because again, we're really focused on not only keeping the astronauts safe, but all of the recovery engineers and medical professionals there on the scene as well. So they're going to continue this purge, just dispelling the immediate area around the service section of the Dragon spacecraft. So this is really a series of fuel tanks outside of the pressure vessel, so where Bob and Doug are inside the Dragon spacecraft, which they did some quick readings inside the cabin and had zeros across the board, but they're just continuing to let these levels dissipate, bring it down to 0, and then we'll resume hatch operations. We're just a little over an hour now, an hour and 2 minutes post splashdown.
Yeah, good to hear Bob and Doug report that they're good hanging out, meaning they're feeling all right and they're pretty comfortable staying inside for just a couple more minutes.
Yeah, they were doing their best prior to leaving of playing up their expected seasickness. So good. It is good to hear that they're doing well still inside the Dragon capsule.
And Dragon SpaceX, we're still seeing good indications from the purge. We're looking to go about another 5 minutes and looking for 0 indications. If at any time you'd like us to speed things up, please let us know.
Oh, we're good. Just keep doing what you're doing. We can wait the 5. Easy.
All right. Thanks, Doug.
All right, so we'll settle in at least another 5 minutes while they just continue to disperse any trace remnants of those hypergol fuels around the service section of Dragon before we once again step into the hatch opening. We're gonna stay with you, stay with this until Bob and Doug are out of the capsule and into their medical quarters.
At this point, Bob and Doug are still strapped into their seats. The seats have actuated away from the position where, I guess, in the orientation in which you see the capsule now. During their during the departure phasing earlier this morning and yesterday, the orientation of the seats were such that essentially Bob and Doug would have been laying on their backs in the orientation where we see Dragon now. Currently, the seats have actuated upward slightly, so they are not completely upright, but they are reclined a little bit, nice and comfy there. But they are able to see in and out of those windows there that we see on either side of the side hatch.
And then once they're able to finish the egress process, getting Bob and Doug out of the capsule, once they're in the medical area, they'll look to start bringing in the helicopter, as both Bob and Doug are going to be flown back to Pensacola via helicopter, getting them to the shore in just a matter of minutes, where a NASA plane is going to be standing by to then load them up and bring them home to Ellington Airfield at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
And Dragon SpaceX, things are still trending well. We're expecting another reading in about 2 minutes, so at 19:56, and looking to hopefully egress you guys shortly after that.
Okay, sounds good, bud. Thank you.
In light of one of the social media questions that we were asked earlier, someone asked if Bob and Doug have Netflix available on their heads-up displays there in the capsule, and they've actually been pretty busy throughout this mission, you know, monitoring telemetry and data and checking for timing. And I would say now's about the time that they would certainly want something to watch because, you know, at this point, their only job left to do is get out of the capsule.
Has to be a feeling of just success, though, for those two. I mean, taking the first flight in a brand new spacecraft, we knew as test pilots this is something that was kind of their bread and butter when they were in the military, and definitely something they leapt at the chance for once they became astronauts. And really a pretty flawless flight for Dragon. Obviously, we'll have all of the post-flight review coming up in the next several weeks as we continue to assess all the data that we received throughout the mission and any data still recorded locally on Dragon itself. And we'll be spending the next several weeks going through and assessing the mission and working through the certification process. And we're already targeting the first operational flight, currently pegged for no earlier than late September.
And Dragon SpaceX, we're now planning to stop the purge in 1 minute at about 19:57.
Copy. Thank you.
All right, well, with them stopping the purge in about a minute, that means that the levels have gone down to what they were looking for, and then we'll begin to step back into the hatch opening process and then be able to get Bob and Doug egressing or moving out of the Dragon capsule. They've been in there for a little more than 19 hours at this point since they departed the space station on Saturday. They had a sleep period, 8 hours of rest on the capsule on their way home. They've been up since a little bit earlier this morning, that wake coming about 4:40 a.m. Pacific, so a little more than 8 hours ago.
And Dragon, the purge is now complete. One more Drager check, and then we should proceed with hatch opening.
Okay, good news. Thanks.
That is good news indeed. So confirmation that the purge is complete, and that they're just going to do one more test to make sure that all of the fumes of concern are away, and that it is safe to open that side hatch and retrieve Bob and Doug. Once again, once that side hatch is open, our flight surgeon will be the first to say hello, get a quick medical checkup, although based on the reports that that the crew have been giving us along the way, it sounds like they're doing great, they're feeling good, and they're pretty comfortable there inside a Crew Dragon.